When I was growing up, in my family, we had a number of, about 3 or 4 idols. One was a man named Roland Hayes. Roland Hayes was the first African-American tenor who sang basically concerts because opera was not open to him at that time. This was in the 30s, 1930s and so on. But he had an international career as a recitalist. The wonderful story of Hayes is, and true story, is that when he made his debut as a recitalist in Germany in the early 30s, he walked on stage to do a Liederabend. He was met with a chorus of boos without ever opening his mouth. The Germans booed him. He was a black man coming to sing Schubert for them and so on. And he just stood there until they got tired of booing. And then he turned to his accompanists and changed the order of his program. And he started with Schubert's Du bist die Ruhe, which means you are repose, you are quiet. And the report is, at the end of his recital, he got a standing ovation. Well, I grew up in Detroit and was born in Indianapolis, but it really started there because both of my parents were musical. My mother probably had a couple of voice lessons at one point, but my dad played 3 instruments, all by ear, piano, fiddle, and guitar. My mother sang all the time, and she sang when I was in the womb, so I came out sort of attuned to singing. I started singing with my parents in churches in Indianapolis when I was 3 years old. By 5, I'd been appearing with them. So it was sort of predestined, I think, that I was going to be involved in music in some manner. Detroit had at that time one of the best systems of public school music education in the country. In elementary school, we had a music teacher who had his or her own room, and we went there once a week. So by the 6th grade, if you had any talent at all, you could read music. You were musically literate. My first experience singing anything from the Verdi Requiem was on one of our spring concerts when we did the Kyrie, and I sang the tenor solos. We did Messiah every year, and I started singing the tenor solos in Messiah in the 11th grade. In my senior year at Wayne, the Glee Club director, Harry Langsford, came to me one day. He said, I want to do Oedipus Rex by Stravinsky. Take a look at the role of Oedipus. He loaned me a score. And it was a wonderful experience. I thoroughly enjoyed it. But it didn't speak to me as a way of life because I was focused on getting my degree in music education, choral music education. And indeed, I began teaching the semester before I graduated. And I was set. It was wonderful. And Uncle Sam came along and messed all that up. I was drafted. In the United States Army, I sang with the United States Army Chorus. I was in the first group that was founded in 1956, and it was there that someone talked me into considering going into professional music and opera, of all things. I thought, come on, I'm not interested in opera, but I didn't want to come back to Detroit and resume my teaching career without knowing something about the profession. And I figured, okay, if I go back to teach and I have a student who shows professional possibilities, what am I going to tell them about? I don't know anything about what it is to stand on stage as a professional singer and deal with that. So I decided that I would extend my period of service for an extra year in the Army, so I'd have benefits to take care of my wife and brand new baby daughter, and study with this gentleman who was teaching in Washington at the time that one of my colleagues was working with. A lot of the guys in the Army Corps were taking private lessons over there. And this old fellow talked me into considering a career as an opera singer. In 1987, we took a tour to California to sing for an ROTC convention, and on the way back, the captain had programmed a performance with the Denver Symphony at Red Rocks Amphitheater. And we had about 5 days free in the Denver area. So we took off and went into the mountains, went to the campus of the University of Colorado to see what that was all about. So we wound up with tickets to see the opera that evening, which was Verdi's Rigoletto, with Frank Guerrera, who was a Metropolitan Opera stalwart, a soprano named Joan Carroll, American, who was singing successfully in Germany, and 2 or 3 other Met people. And so this is my first opera. And I sat there that night listening to John Crane. I've said this often, he just peeling the paint off of the walls of this little opera house. And I thought to myself, gee, it's a good thing I never wanted to be an opera singer because I could never do that all night long. 4 years later, I would make my Metropolitan Opera debut with Frank Guerrera in Così fan tutte. And 2 years after that, sing the American premiere of Alban Berg's Lulu in Santa Fe with Joan Carroll. I decided I would enter the Met auditions because I wanted to get some feedback from people who knew. And I lost. But I went to the reception following it. They came up to me. I was standing there at the reception by myself, and they walked over to me and they said, Gutman said, well, we want you to know that we liked very much what we heard you do. We don't think you're ready to go to New York City yet, but you keep doing what you're doing. That's all I needed to hear. That said, you're on the right track. I got a call from a woman named Sally Tournow, and she said, I run a small opera company in Woodstock, New York during the summer, and we've just lost one of our tenors. Went up and auditioned for them. They gave me a contract for the summer of 1959. All of the operas were in English. A little theater that seated about 250 people with 2 pianos. It was a perfect way to start a career. I sang 5 operas that summer. They were all in English, thank God, so I didn't have to hassle foreign languages. I made my debut as Eisenstein in Die Fledermaus. When I walked out on stage that first night for Fledermaus, I knew I was home. I tell my students, you never know what's going to happen. You plan, you work to fulfill your plans, but life has something else possibly in mind for you to do. So be open right now while you're studying here at the university. Do the work that's in front of your nose to do. Do it. Commit yourself to it. And life will take care of the rest of it.